A lot to cover. Appreciate everybody being here. I'll start with Mike or Chief. Yeah, Chief, if you want to come on up. And obviously, been unfortunately a busy week for us at the police department. And certainly, I know you'll have questions and wanted to give you some updates. So we'll start with that. Chief, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity this week to come before the press conference to talk about the arrest we had last week and the anti-Semitic cases that we've been working here in the City of Pensacola. As you all know, we arrested four juveniles for the incidents that's been happening here in the City of Pensacola over the last few weeks. We received a lot of information and tips from the community, but I want to congratulate and thank our investigators, our staff, our state partners, FDLE and the FBI, who all worked collaboratively together to make sure that we brought these individuals to justice. And also to our community, I want to say thank you as well, because without the collaboration with our community, none of the stuff that we do would be possible, because our community was very instrumental in being astute, aware, and being able to share information. If you see something, you say something, and that's just truly beneficial in our community. These acts were very detrimental to our community. I had an opportunity to speak with both rabbis for the Jewish centers that were damaged by these individuals. They are very thankful for the efforts of the police department in our astute investigation into these incidents. But what I want to say to the community is we remain steadfast as your law enforcement agency, as your partner and collaborator, to make sure that we thoroughly and aggressively investigate any and all acts in the community, especially those that are spewed with hate and to instill fear in the community. But I'm glad to say here today that we have arrested 4 individuals, and at that time, I will stand by to take any questions that the media may have in reference to the investigation.
Chief, can you tell us anything about the investigation as far as how y'all conducted the investigation and found that these were the individuals responsible?
Yes, I won't get into all the specifics of some of the things that we utilized, but this investigation was very thorough, and I will tell you this: the investigation is still ongoing, because we still have some things that are outstanding, some evidence that we are looking to collect. It involves interviews, it involves surveillance, it involves good old-fashioned police work, it involves communicating and collaborating with our community, and it involves forensic work as well. So it is a whole multitude of different facets of law enforcement capabilities and community capabilities that came together to bring this investigation to fruition.
And I understand the investigation is ongoing, but is there anything you can tell us about involvement of these people in groups, whether they be Facebook groups, whether they be, was there a social media trail you can talk to us about? Were there images from community events around town where they might have been on part of another demonstration that had the same type of group associated with it? Is there anything you can tell us about their associates, who they might be associated with, or any types of groups, or I think you see where I'm going with that.
Right, and I would say as part of our investigation, and there are aspects of the investigation that utilizes the internet and social media realm. So as far as what evidence that we specifically collected from various different forums and things of that nature, I won't get into, but those avenues are part of this investigation.
The 3 individuals who are under 18, do you know at this time if they're going to be charged as adults?
At this time, I do not know that. We'll have to confer with the state's attorney's office on that.
Do we have any indication what their motivation was?
Without speculating, anybody that does anything like this, the motivation is to instill hate and fear in the community. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. And want to echo thanks to the police department, all the investigators that when you think about the damage that something like this causes, it's not just the physical damage, the spray paint, the damage to city facilities that took place during this, but it's the bandwidth that is taken away from our police department that has a lot of investigations going on, and huge kudos to them with everything else that they have going on. that obviously this became a high priority, and it was able to be resolved in short order thanks to the great investigative work that they had put on. And so, at the end of the day, my expectation moving forward is that these are that the charges are treated seriously, and what all I can hope, it's certainly not in my hands, but that this is pursued to the fullest extent of the law, because at the end of the day, this isn't a one-time thing. This is a as the chief just mentioned, something that we continue to investigate right now. That there's the charges already out there, and who knows what else is going to happen from this point forward. So this isn't a one-time thing. This is a calculated approach to try to intimidate and create fear in people who live here. And as I can speak personally and say, we're just not going to tolerate it. And I hope that that this is taken as seriously as possible, and that again we pursue this to the fullest extent of the law. Anyway, we'll get to any other questions that you have about that or other things PPD related after I'll get through this list. Some good news. I know you saw on Friday afternoon the $2.625 million in grant funding for American Magic. That brings us to, after the first two grants, brings us to $15 million in total. That was this final bucket of money was focused on the dock and the ramp that would go outside of the Center for Maritime Excellence. So it was something that we put in for. We didn't know how long it would be to get back, and we knew that we could get American Magic moved into the building. That was priority one, and that even if this took a little bit of extra time, that was okay because we were able to get them moved in. So the pleasant surprise to have that awarded already, and what that means for our community is not only does it make the facility more functional for the tenant, the future tenant, but also it allows, we've talked about what's the value of having American Magic here. It's to be able to compound their presence with national and international sailing races, regattas. If we're going to be the sailing capital of the United States, how do we capitalize on that? And that takes infrastructure sometimes. So the nice thing about this is this dock will allow American Magic to host national and international events up to certain size boats. That maybe not the one as large that they'll be sailing in Barcelona, but junior events, regattas, those kinds of things that can be hosted truly on a worldwide scale. This is a facility that they would need to be able to do that. And so I really look at this grant as not only closure on being able to get this fully funded, but also this starts that process of us being able to capitalize on American Magic being here. So we're really, really excited for that. Budget update, we had our budget workshop yesterday. So we were able to get all the way through it. And we continue to focus on, as you'll see in there, the people that work here, the 850 people that work here, and that we have an engaged workforce, and that we have that we support them competitively amongst municipalities, as well as taking care of the things that we have in our city. I think we're in this great place right now with 94 parks and counting, and 10 plus community centers, facilities to take care of. It's not so much that we need a lot more amenities in the city. It's that we should take care of the things that we do have. And so you'll see as you go through that budget, and that was a lot of the thematic conversation yesterday was, how do we serve the customer better? How do we serve the people who work here better? And how do we serve the taxpayer in terms of maintaining the amenities that we promise them? So that's really an overarching theme throughout all of that budget conversation. Of course, that will continue. An update on Pelican Drop. We had a meeting last week in this room with every internal organization that would be a part of any kind of downtown event that the city would be heading up or be an active operator in. So, of course, that's police, fire, public works, sanitation, and as well as representatives from the sheriff's department and representatives from external people who have operated Pelican Drop in the past that could give us good perspective on what it's like. And really the takeaways ultimately is it's hard to pull off and it's expensive. That's what I'll tell you would be the two takeaways if you were in the meeting. It's I believe the last budget, I don't remember exactly which year it was, the last time it was done, but the was $200,000 maybe north of that, as well as an organizing process that started in March. At the end of the day, I still feel the same way I felt when I was asked about it last time, which is philosophically having events that help enhance the livability, the placemaking of downtown. I'm always going to want to entertain. But what I don't want to do is spend $200,000 or a significant portion of that of taxpayer money to put on an event that is rushed in terms of its, in terms of it being executed, and then it not be safe, not be. I would way rather, people be upset with me because we're not doing something at all than to do something poorly with their taxpayer money. So we're not ruling anything out or city participation out in any way moving forward. But just as a matter of this coming New Year's Eve, with doing a Pelican drop, the city won't be leading or heading up any kind of operation. That doesn't stop anybody from, at this point, outside of us, to put a permit in. We are not saying we're boycotting or banning anyone else from doing anything. But of course, just like us, the clock is certainly ticking at this point to pull off something of large scale. So we do know what these events do for the community. Some events are probably a little bit better about bringing back some of that return on investment in terms of heads and beds and those kinds of things. We don't know that this event necessarily does that. But it is something that is positive for the community in general. But it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's 50-plus police officers. It's the fire department. It's $20,000 in repairs to a Pelican. Everything you can think of has a price tag to make this happen. And so DIB, of course, Walker with DIB was there. So it was a good conversation, but it was labeled precisely, which was this was a what-if conversation about could we do Pelican drop. And I think we all left the meeting pretty unanimous that especially for this year, that's not something that we'll be taking on. I want to give an update about 311. We on tickets. I don't know if you may have recalled that I've had Lisa Dees, who is over parking, also add to her plate 311 and getting some oversight, some day-to-day oversight on 311. On July 1st, we had 2,608 open tickets in 311. And so more than 1,200 of those were open tickets were 365 days old, more than 365 days old since any action had been recorded. And so that's July 1. As of August 4th, we have 338. So we've gotten through in about 33 days, we've gotten through 2,300 tickets ever since we've made that change. So a huge kudos to Lisa and the team to get us to where we want to be, which is it's really the same concept I talked about with 311 is, with the Pelican drop, which is what's the use of having 311 if it's not effective? All it does is if it lets people down that they make a call and they don't hear back, then we're not doing our job. So I'm really excited. We knew that this might be an issue coming in to this administration, and it was something that we wanted to get fixed because we don't want to tell people to call and us not execute. So we're well on our way there, and we're starting to make some changes. So I really look at that as some really good news and really good headway. Warehouse 4, Project Pickle, the contract has been executed between the port and the developer. So we are moving forward with design. And at this point, the operator has 18 months to complete construction. So only things that we're hanging up from the original conversation were fairly clerical in nature, and just on how we're going to calculate things at renewal and things like that. It was all kind of semantics at the end of that took a little bit of time, but wasn't any jeopardy of us not getting it done. So excited to get that project up and moving. And yet again, another asset that I think will be for our community. 45,000 square foot floor, and to give you perspective, the Bay Center is 23,000 square feet. So you're talking about a floor space, whether it be pickleball or anything else, that enters our community. That's twice the size of the largest floor space in the city. So there's a lot, as you can imagine, there's a lot of creative ways we're going to be able to use that space, whether it be, I know Pensacola has been in conversations with them, as well as, of course, pickleball tournaments, basketball, tennis, things like that. So really, really excited to get that going. We have a TSA pre-check temporary enrollment center scheduled for Monday, September 18th through Friday, September 22nd at the airport. and you can get appointments now. So tsa.gov/precheck to make an appointment. They fill up very fast if you don't recall. So anybody, when you get the word out there, I wouldn't wait a day. And it's how I've signed up for PreCheck. It's very convenient, doesn't take too long, and certainly is worth it, both here at our airport and everywhere else. The next neighborhood cleanup, just one more reminder, and then happy to take some questions, is Saturday, August 26th, and that's in the Spanish Trail area north of Summit, including Bay Cliff, Lavalley, Gaborone, Bohemia, and surrounding neighborhoods. So cityofpensacola.com or check our Facebook page to make sure you're in that map. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you got.
And I'm sorry, I have another follow-up question for the chief. I don't know if it's
Sure.
too
Yeah.
late. I guess there's been reports of other similar incidents in the county. Do y'all have any information to believe that the incidents in the county are related to the ones in the city as far as the anti-Semitic graffiti and things like that?
Yeah, I can't comment on what the county is investigating right now, but I know we've been working closely together last week on some of the things that related to some of our arrests. So what specifically they have going on right now, I can't comment specifically on that. You have to talk to them about that.
And then also the charges were on these four individuals were enhanced to a hate crime. Can you talk a little bit about what that means legally as far as what triggers that charge?
So, excuse me. So the location, the type of graffiti that's been used, the methods and things of that nature, and then those enhancements. I mean, when you look at those enhancements, I mean, you go depending on what the nature of the charge is, going anywhere from 5 to 15 years maximum penalty. So that's why they were enhanced to hate crimes.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Any questions?
This one's just on parking.
Yeah.
And a consultant. As
Yeah.
you mentioned, you've got someone in city staff that's dedicated to parking. You're all smart people in planning and development.
Mhm.
Could you talk a little bit about what a consultant actually could add that
Sure.
people that we have can't really figure out?
Yeah, well, I think having a consultant that understands really the business of parking. So when you talk about from a planning perspective, that might be, parking requirements for certain size buildings, things like that. What we're looking at is we want to take a smart business customer friendly mindset, and I don't know that we've ever done that. I think we've had parking, then we've gone to paid parking, and then we pick some zones, and so I think those are all very well intended, and I don't know that we've ever had an expert come in and say, well, why are you charging on this street and not on this one, or why are you charging on this street? That doesn't make any sense. One example that we know, as a matter of fact, several years ago when Donald Shoup, who's considered the czar of parking nationally, came to speak at Civicon, I walked with him down Palafox, and he said it's the first time I've ever seen free parking on the busiest street and paid parking on the street next to it. So we've had some deep-rooted, I'm talking about for years now, 2-hour parking. No one puts in 2-hour parking anymore. No, if you can find a city that changes something that they have now to 2-hour parking, I've never seen it. And so that it's really more of bringing somebody on the business side that knows what those metrics are, knows about dynamic pricing, knows about where we should be charging and when and what times. That's what we're really looking for is someone who's been on that private side who understands that. And also, look, I mean, our ultimate goal is we want the easiest experience possible. And I continue to say, when someone stops me or emails me and complains about price, I know it's usually not the price, especially if it's in our lots. What I know is that the experience wasn't good. And this is our attempt with a parking consultant to take ownership, even including things that happen on lots of which we don't control. How do we take better ownership as the city, whether it's working with our private lot owners, whether it's collaborating with them, what can we do instead of being left with the answer of that's not our lot? And we can say that right now, and that is factual, but if I'm a tourist or my daughter had a boot put on their car in the middle of the night, it's not an acceptable answer, and I get that, and I get the frustration. So this is our attempt to do everything within our control and to have conversations of things outside of our control about how we can make a better experience for everybody. And because, again, I'm just frankly tired of emailing people saying, I'm sorry, it's not my lot. I've had too many of those emails, and we're not wrong for saying that. It is true. It's It's not an acceptable answer, and so we got to get better there.
On the 311 analysis,
Mm-hmm.
what were, do you get any kind of report, like what were the things that were sitting out there for so long? Or, you know, what was meaningful?
I don't have that breakdown, but what I'll tell you is look, that's not always just within the 311 department. Think about how the tree of 311, right? The call comes in to 311, but there's a lot of moving parts that have to be working at the same time.
Follow up whether some items could have been closed, but y'all 311
Correct.
still added in the system.
Yeah, correct. It doesn't mean that all 22,000 plus of those had not been done. It could be a matter of that it didn't get closed by one of the departments. It could have been that it never got to the department. It could have gotten there and then forgotten and then not picked back up again. So there's a lot of ways. Those 2,000 plus open tickets could be open for many reasons, including that they still got done, but they never came to closure. And why closure is important, not only just from a standard operating perspective, is closure also means the citizen knows. You know, so if I call 311 about a code issue or a sanitation issue, and you fix it, but I never hear about it, you know, I mean, we've got hardworking people here that try to make this a great place to live. We should be able to close the loop and celebrate the win, right? I mean, to say, hey guys, we're on it. You know, in 72 hours, we've sent you an email back and said, thanks for the update. We want to let you know that it's done. So even if the majority of these tickets were things that were completed that didn't. That just never got the final button. Still, I think that final button's important. I want citizens to feel like that they have value of living in the city, and part of that is I called, I heard back, and it came to closure. And sometimes closure is sorry, that's not us. That's a county road. It could be things that are out of our control as well, or a state road. But that's still closure, right? I mean, you get the answer and say, well, okay, it's a state road. I understand that. But leaving those things open at any part of this process, whether it's all the way from never getting it done to just not closing the loop, can't be done. We've got to close the loop.
So what's the next step? Do you consider the system fixed? Do you consider going to get back a report on how y'all are going to change the system?
So we're cleaning up the current software, and obviously we're looking at, as we always are, we're looking at what's the best standard operating procedure where we're not going to be in this position again. And again, that's a multi-departmental approach, right, of where these calls come in, who's the point person at each one of these places, and who makes sure they don't have to do it themselves, and how do they delegate that out and make sure that it gets done and comes to closure. So there's just some foundational things in the customer interaction that need to be cleaned up, and Lisa's on top of it. And so there could be a software change. I mean, I don't know that we've committed to that yet. It'll just all be what's the easiest way, most efficient way for us to be able to get these things done.
Timetable?
I'd hate to speculate on that at this point. The good news is, again, getting 2,300 tickets closed out in 32 days. That's my kind of trajectory. Right. But in terms of what those changes might be, I think it'll be an ongoing process. But again, I just. When we report back that this is something that we want citizens to be able to use as an asset or an amenity of the community, we got to make it an amenity of the community. So, so more to come on some of those changes.
Mayor, at the budget workshop yesterday during the overview portion in the morning, there was a line item that the city owed a payment to the YMCA. Mm-hmm. It was, I think, less than $200,000.
Yeah.
But what's that all about? You had mentioned earlier, a month or so ago, that you were still negotiating, still working through issues with the YMCA. Where do we stand on all that?
Yeah, just had a meeting with Mr. Bodenhausen last week. The pool operation contract is up after this pool season, so we had our first meeting about how we move forward from here. That expense, that line item is the additional cost for operating the pool this year, and how the contract works ultimately is we pay the YMCA flat fee, and then revenues are passed through to us, and expenses are passed through to us. So that was the increase in expenses from lifeguard minimum wage to chemicals to everything else. So it was a big number, and again, I don't fault YMCA for that. That's what the operating agreement is. But it was a good reminder for us to, as we roll into what a new agreement would be, is some of the concerns that we would have and some of the concerns that they would have. And, I always maintain, I don't care what it is, it's not always easier for the city to operate something, or cheaper to do for the taxpayer. So we're looking at our options. If there's something, if the YMCA has an impact on a lot of kids in our community, if that's the best option for us moving forward, I think that's where we start. They're the current vendor, and if there's a non-starter for them or a non-starter for us, we'll entertain that and go on from there. But that's a one-time line item that was really making up what we had budgeted for the previous year for pool operations and the increase in the cost of those operations.
And in the bathrooms over at Roger Scott at the pool,
Yep.
they're still work in progress?
So really, I've put a little bit of a hold on them. We've got a general design. The only reason is really for your previous question, which is if the YMCA is running it, how many bathrooms, how many lockers, how much closet space do they need, that kind of thing. Or if someone else was running it. I think it would be short-sighted to go put a shovel in the dirt on a $1.2 million bathroom that ends up not being the design that would be needed for whoever's operating it. Or whatever future plans are at that pool, if it was, extending a pool or something like that, we don't want to go spend seven figures on something that ends up being obsolete in a short period of time. So we're ready to go there. We want to be smart and kind of tactical about how we use those dollars.
Yesterday, the Children's Trust had the vote on the policy for buying property, and they decided to ask the Attorney General for a legal opinion. It doesn't seem like that's going to be ready in time next month for the Resource Center project. I guess, what's your reaction to that decision and thoughts on where that proposal stands now?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating would be an understatement. And really, it's because candidly, at every turn, I think we put a really good team together of supporters of this. The city, the county, community health, Lakeview, even had started to have some preliminary conversations with Baptist, property-wise, about around the building. And, I just continue to feel misguided at the staff level about what is expected of us. After our first meeting, we get an email, it sounds great. We put an application, it sounds great. Then we go to a meeting, and for the first time, all of us that are trying to put something that's good for the community hear about something we've never heard before, in the middle of a public meeting, that there's a legal issue or there's a legal question. Perfectly fine. We don't mind that. But it'd be kind of nice, and I've been in front of a lot of boards and a lot of councils in my career, private and now, and I've just never had an experience where I'm learning about things that were question marks from staff when that staff is presenting it to the board for the first time. So honestly, I apologize, frankly, to our staff who spends a lot of time, our Parks and Rec department, Dina, in finance, that spends a lot of time and effort on something that, as I've maintained and as I've spoken at one of these committees and said, I personally do not care if the city buys the building or if the trust wanted to buy the building. What I want is positive action for the children of this community. That's what I want. So. And I could speak confidently for Commissioner May, for the County Commission, for Chandra, Community Health, and Lakeview. That's what we all want. This is not something that we have to do. We're not looking for one more thing to do. We're looking for something that we know could have impact. So it's unfortunate that we continue to get the runaround on we don't know who's on first, and we only find that out in meetings, in public meetings, and so. That's been frustrating. We get emails after our private meetings that we have with staff that say the application looks great and everything's good to go, and then we go to a meeting and we find out it's not. So it's been frustrating, and frankly, if I didn't know how valuable this could potentially be at the end of the rainbow, and that honestly, if it wasn't a children-related thing, I might be waving my hands at this point until we have some better understanding about how things are going. So my frustration's not in whether it gets passed or not passed. My frustration's in the procedure. I mean, that's all. I have felt misguided really from the beginning, that we hear one thing, then we hear another, and then we hear one thing. So I don't take that as a reflection of the Children's Trust Board in any way. The board is there. They've got day jobs. They've been impactful on children in this community. I know some. I don't know others. It's unfortunate that it's gone the way that it's gone so far. And certainly I hope we can get to some understanding, whether it gets passed or it doesn't. But hiding the ball and having that feeling that we're hiding the ball on what the actual goal is or what we need to do to try to make this happen has been very frustrating, if you can't tell.
And then, I guess, I know you said you haven't ruled anything out on the Pelican drop for future years. I guess, what would you place the odds on one happening in 2025?
Well, it's hard to say. Previous years of this have had significant private sponsorship. I guess you'd have to really repurpose the question this way. How likely would it be that the city on its own financially would take this on in 2025? Probably less than 50-50, maybe a little less than that. But would we entertain if this was something that DIB wanted to do and support financially, if there was private investment sponsorship in this, that people wanted to see this? I would never not entertain that. But I think, again, when you think about the logistics of this, 50 plus police officers off duty. I mean, back in my old days, if I could get one sheriff or police officer to take an off duty because it's such a hard night, we're busy on duty. It's a hard night to get people to work off duty. That's anywhere in the country. To have that amount of officers, our fire department, all of that, just the logistics of it alone would be a heavy lift for us, including having sponsorship. So for the city to be funding it as well as also being operating it, I don't know that scenario is very likely. But would we entertain a partnership, whether that's city, county, private? That we would always entertain any kind of conversation around that. Anything else? All right, guys. Thanks so much.